Hey everybody, and welcome to another Chairman of the Board ranking video, the first one of 2024. Now this is where I talk about the last 10 new to me board games that I have played, and I rank them from my least favourite up to my most favourite. Now most of these are actually fairly recent games, so not as much of a spread as I normally have on this series, but still some diverse games here. Now before I get started on the 10 games, I want to give a shout out to the show sponsor KIENDA.co.uk, who are my go-to online retailer, and if you use the link in the show notes or the QR code, then you can get 5% off your first order. Okay, so let's start the video with number 10, which is Chess Atet. Now this is actually a very relatively obscure game, very small time publisher. Now this is essentially a card game version of chess. Mechanically it doesn't work anything like chess, as you probably imagine with a card game, but essentially what you're doing is you're playing these piece cards, as in the kings, the pawns, etc., and hopefully getting a certain arrangement of cards out there to play a matching attack card, which requires the certain pieces to be played in order to fulfill that attack. And then you're absorbing the damage by taking your opponent's chess pieces off the board, or they get to choose which ones are removed. And again, hopefully try to start build up that army again. And it's that process that didn't quite work for me. It was very much start and stop. It had a little bit of a rich get richer feeling to it, because if you have an army and you pull off a big attack, you're going to wipe off your opponent's army essentially, and then they're going to be recovering, and by the time they've recovered, you've already got your army and you can attack them again. So I think this could have done with a lot more work. It doesn't quite fit the kind of game that I'm looking for, and it's just, again, very much just wailing on each other. Again, very luck dependent, not very satisfying style head versus head game. So I'd rather just play a game of chess. I'm quite a fan of chess, and this one doesn't live up to the original. So that's Chess Atet at number 10. At number 9, I have Cobra Yakwa. Now, this is a game I've only played once so far, so this one does have potential to rise for me. Now, this is an ultra simplistic card game where you are trying to have the highest card in your hand, essentially. But the twist in this one is that there's always a card in the centre of the table, and that one is added on to the person with the lowest card, I believe. And you are somewhat wagering on yourself to win the round or not. And all you do mechanically is you either swap your card with one from the deck, or you change the card in the middle with the new one on top of the deck. So sometimes you can actually win here with a low card if the card in the middle is fairly high, because of course they'll get added together. And I do like this wagering thing where if you think you've got a good chance of winning, you'll put one of your tokens in, but whoever has won the round gets all of the tokens. So it does have this, again, a bit of a wagering and a bit of a gamble thing going on. This is a game that I think is going to peak at the higher player counts. I've only played at 3 players so far, which is definitely suboptimal, but I am intrigued to try it with more. So the jury is still out with this one. It might be a little bit too simplistic for its own good, but it's certainly elegant. That is Cobra Yakwa at number 9. At number 8, I have Archaeologic, which is a 2023 release. This is a pure logical deduction game where you are trying to figure out the perfect orientation of these polyomino style tiles on your personal player board. You're going to do that by getting clues through this very clever contraption where you'll ask, how many different shapes are in this row or column, how many of these symbols are in this row or column, and of course there's only one particular orientation that can abide by all of those restrictions. I tend to like and enjoy deduction games. I don't tend to do too well at them, but this one, despite me liking a lot about it, it works as it should do. It has a kind of a time track mechanism where the more accurate of a question you'll ask, it means that you'll spend more time and not get another go for quite a while. My issue with this game is that there's a lot of downtime due to the fact that you do not get information on other players' turns. So it's pretty much purely multiplayer solitaire, and it's a race to get to the answer, whereas my favourite deduction games are the ones where you're drip-fed information even when it's not your turn. And I think that hurts this clever game quite significantly. So I think if there was some degree of player interaction, this one will probably rank higher. But because I have other deduction games in my collection that do what I just said, then I'm always going to lean towards those because they are that much more engaging. So that is Archaeologic at number 8. At number 7, I have Alpu Harris. This is a newish game by Dr. Steve Finn of Biblios fame. This one is more of your mid-weight Euro, maybe medium lightweight Euro, a resource management game with the time track system. Now, I'm a big fan of the time track mechanism where you can go as far as you like to get a certain action, but you can never go back on yourself, and you do not get another turn until the other players bypass you. And I definitely think this game did a good job of giving you that angst of how far do I go, because I really want that bonus, but if I don't take that bonus, I can maybe get more turns of smaller actions. It's all about weighing up which you want to do. So, you know, in terms of pulling that mechanism off to a high standard, I think this game did a good job. Other than that, you are essentially collecting certain fruits, you are trading them into complete contracts, and so on. So it's a fairly average Euro held together through a time track system, and it's good. You know, it's a good, solid, well-rounded game, but I do feel like it lacks something special, something distinctive to make it stand out from the pack. I think once you've played this a few times, you're going to kind of have seen what it has to offer and are going to be ready to move on, which is sadly a sign of the times, really. A lot of the games nowadays are play a couple of times and move on. This one, I think, is quite a strong example of that, despite it being, you know, a well put together and well founded game, which you'd expect from Steve Finn. At number 6, I have another Steve Finn game with the Fisheries of Gloucester. Now, this is a 2-player only game that feels somewhat abstract in the way that it plays, and what you're doing is that you are trying to collect these fish and tie them up against these contracts to score victory points. This one has a good feeling of importance, where every single fish you catch is significant, because there are only so many on the board that tie and correlate to the contracts. And the way the game works is you're going to be building a kind of a route by placing these polyomino style tiles, or they're kind of not quite polyominoes, but they are explored areas of the sea that you can move your boats down, your fishing vessels, and then you're kind of moving your boats down using this action point system, and then grabbing the fish in adjacent spaces, again, hopefully cashing them in to complete those contracts. But it's definitely one of those opportunity cost style games where if you do one thing, you're leaving your opponent an opportunity to do something else. There's a bit of blocking and stuff like that. So again, very rigid, very abstract in the way that it works. Again, blocking, working out how many action points your opponent has, that kind of stuff. So if you like those styles of games, mixed with a bit of contract fulfillment and resource management, then this one could work for you. For me, I liked it. Again, it's a solid 6 out of 10, but it didn't really grab me and hook me to kind of stay on par with the other abstract games of that nature I have in my collection. So, you know, a good one. You know, I'm not going to say it's a miss, because it certainly isn't, but one that I don't think's got quite enough to stay in my collection. At number 5, I have Trigs. Now, this is a fairly unknown small box card game. It kind of has a roll and write feel to it, where you're trying to tick off these different numbers, and it's a race to get all the numbers ticked off. And the way you tick the numbers off is through hand management, where you have a fairly standard deck of cards. I think the cards range from 1 up to 12. And what you can do is you have a hand of 10 cards, or up to 10 cards, and you can trade them in to tick them off the matching cards on your sheet, or you can actually combine the cards together to get other numbers. So for example, you could have a 7 and a 1, put them together and tick off an 8. And as soon as you finish a row, you can tick off another one on another row, which can of course create some chain reactions. And again, that's pretty much what the game is, just managing the cards in your hand, ticking off boxes as efficiently as possible, trying not to waste any movement, and be the first to tick all those boxes off. There's something about this game that's better than it sounds on paper. It's quite engaging. That race aspect does really shine through towards the latter portion of the game. I've seen some good comebacks here, and it has that addictive quality to it. You know, once I finish this one, you know, it's only a 10-15 minute game. I feel like, you know what, let's go one more time because I enjoyed it. And, you know, it's very thin. It's a veneer of a game. It certainly hasn't got the depth or anything to it, and generally more than often it's going to level itself out. But despite all that, it is still an enjoyable little card game that's cheap, you know, it's affordable, and it's not going to take up much space on your shelves. And whoever I've played this with so far has enjoyed it. So that is Trigs at number 5. At number 4 is a true roll and write with Medici, the dice game. So you guys might be familiar with the original Medici, a Reiner Knizia bidding style game. This one has a slight bit of cross-contamination with the original, but generally it's its own game in its own right. So you're going to roll 5 dice. The active player is going to choose up to 3 of those dice and populate their little player sheet. Now they're trying to either get the highest cumulative value of all the dice they've drafted for the round, because there's going to be a nice chunk of points that way, but also each individual symbol on those dice are going to correlate to this individual track where you're trying to have the majority there as well. So you have these two kind of competing majorities going on at the same time, and it's nice that once you've taken your turn as the main player, everybody else can choose one of the die that you haven't chosen for yourself. So sometimes you can use that tactically as well to leave your opponents with options that aren't so optimal for them. I like the way that each round gets slightly longer than the last, but it still doesn't outstay its welcome. This is another 15-minute game, again, 1 out of 5 in terms of the weight, and another game that's gone down well. So since I've had this one, I've actually played it quite a few times, and I still have the itch to get it back to the table, which is always a good sign. So nothing special, nothing glamorous. You know, it is more of an older roll and write style game in its feel, but it works. So that is Medici, the dice game, at number 4. At number 3, I have Diatoms. Now, Diatoms, I believe, is going to be fulfilling on Kickstarter, because it's already had a successful campaign relatively soon. So hopefully it's going to be available at retail. I assume it is, if it's been provided to me as a review copy. But this one is a puzzly pattern recognition style game that kind of is a hybrid of that and tile placement. So you're going to be placing a tile in a communal area, trying to match up colours, and when you complete a ring of these tiles, or the colours on these connecting tiles, then you're going to get a certain amount of these tokens which you're going to populate your personal player board with. And you are trying to create mirrored images, you're trying to have as many of a certain colour as you can, all the different shapes, etc., as well as some constant and also variable objectives for that particular game. And this can be quite a brain burner as you're trying to optimally place everything. I like this idea of sometimes having to weigh up what you're willing to commit to, because sometimes if you commit to more, you might achieve less, whereas you might be a bit more reserved and try to pull off something that might be less optimistic or ambitious, but it might guarantee you those points. Now, I have recorded my review of this one. I imagine this video will drop before that one, but so keep an eye out for my full review of Diatoms, because it certainly feels unique, and I think this one could be a hit with the right wind under its sails. So that is Diatoms at number 3. And at number 2, I have World Wonders. So getting a bit of buzz at the moment, this polyomino style game. I like the idea that you're drafting from a common pool of tiles here. So the turn angst is very strong on this one. You're drafting these tiles of different colours and shapes, populating your board, trying to surround the existing tiles to get points. But the cool thing about this game is the fact that you can buy these nice looking World Wonders, these kind of wooden pieces that you'll put on your player board that will all require certain conditions and will gain you points. So for example, you might get these big viaducts that will say you need to start on land, finish on land, but you need to go over water. It needs to be next to this shape and also this shape or this colour. And I like that idea of needing to build something in order to get one of those wonders. And that tied into the fact that those wonders are public and are draftable by all the other players, again, really ramps up that anxiety to get things done quickly. And I like the idea that the wonders don't actually have a fixed value, they just cost the remainder of your action points or your currency that you have left for the round. So it get a chicken mechanism of when do I pull the switch here and take that wonder, because there's always going to be a risk of being taken by somebody else. But at the same time, maybe I could get another tile before it's my turn again, and it might still be there. So again, really interactive game for what is essentially a multiplayer solitaire game, which is a bit of an oxymoron. But if you played the game, you'd understand what I'm saying here. But well put together, fun, scales well, lots of different wonders, and it's just a nice, enjoyable game with some pretty simplistic scoring. So that is World Wonders at number 2. And finally, at number 1, I have Haaland, which is another game by Reiner Knizia. This one is a brand new one, and boy oh boy, do I like this game. So this one is one of those route building style games, or kind of near area control, you could put it that way. There's in the vein of games like Babylonia, Blue Lagoon, Through the Desert, where you have a big grid essentially, and you're populating it with your markers, and you score points in different ways. So in this one, you are trying to build out from the central road and venture into different terrain types to get you more points when you launch these balloons, as well as kind of combining your pieces together in certain regions, touching these pavilions, as well as some variable and interchangeable objectives. This is the style of game that really sings to me, because although you have tons of options, you are tunnel visioned through this hot air balloon system, as each round the hot air balloon will move around the border or the edge of the map, and that will determine which rows you can deploy your markers into, with a few exceptions through these special pieces. The more I play this one, the more I like it. It's completely embedded itself into my collection already, and I'm super keen to play it more and more and more, because these games are what I'm really enjoying at the moment. So I think in my review, it should be uploaded by now. I said that, I wish I'd played this game before I recorded my top 10 games of 2023, because this one would be a contender for the top spot, or at least the top couple of spots. It's that good, in my opinion. Might not be the best jumping on point for this style of Knizia game, but if you've played those games I've mentioned already, this one is certainly a progression point to go to. It is phenomenally well executed. So that is Haaland at number 1. So there we have it, that concludes the video. Hopefully there's something on here that has caught your attention. If you have enjoyed the content, then please be sure to check out my other content, and maybe the reviews associated to these, which should all be released sooner rather than later. But of course, if you have enjoyed it, please subscribe, and please check out my other content and everything else. And for everyone else, I'll see you next time on Chairman of the Board. Bye bye.